All right, and with the press of a button, we are live. Today it's Friday, it's noon, which means I am probably doing one of my book discussions. I do these discussions every single week. You'll see the next few discussions and the books we're going to be covering in the description for this particular video, but today we're talking about The Fred Factor. And it's a book that almost flies under the radar. It's not hugely popular out there, and you may not have been exposed to it in the past, but it's a nice, short story and description on how to bring exceptional performance and bring all of yourself to even ordinary jobs. And it's a wonderful book I was exposed to by a coworker of mine 7-8 years ago. I brought it to supervisors, and it's something I've recommended for people who have hit a little bit of a rut as far as your work career goes. This kind of gives you a little bit of a boost. It's a little bit motivational, but it's great for everybody on your team. And there's some great lessons for you to take in your leadership and to pass on to others. Steve, so good to see you here. So if you have any questions on anything that I'm talking about, drop down in the comments. Go ahead and ask them. This is meant to be a live book discussion on this, but I kind of take some of the underlying passages that I had and some of the things that really jumped out to me and that I think could be applicable to frontline leaders, and we just kind of spin through those. But to give you kind of a synopsis of the book, I'll actually just read from the front leaf of the book, and that is, in this powerful new book, The Fred Factor, motivational speaker Mark Sanborn recounts the true story of Fred, the mail carrier who passionately loves his job and who genuinely cares about the people he serves. Because of that, he is constantly going the extra mile handling the mail, and sometimes watching over the houses of the people on his route, treating everyone he meets as a friend. Where others might see delivering mail as a monotonous drudgery, Fred sees an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those he serves. And this book is just a really great encapsulation of what you bring as a leader. Sometimes it is not fun being a leader. Sometimes it's difficult. There's all kinds of struggles. There's the weight of responsibility. But you have an enormous impact on those around you, not just for the 8 or 9 hours they're with you at work, but what they bring home to their team, what they bring home to their families, what they do on the weekends, that sort of thing. So you have an enormous impact, and this book kind of calls it out and kind of champions that, and it's a fun little read. So I'll start with kind of some of the things that jumped out to me, and some of them have to do with being a Fred, as he calls it. Mark Sanborn moved into a new house, and his new postal carrier came up, very warm, introduced himself, asked what Mark did. Mark's a motivational speaker. Okay, well, I'll hold your mail when you're away from town, if you let me know what your schedule is. I mean, really personalized service, and it really stood out. And that's what really started this whole discussion within Mark Sanborn, the author, in identifying Freds, as he called them, people that went the extra mile, people who love their job. And we see those in our day in, day out lives. We see those people, whether it's at Starbucks, those people that just love being a barista and are social butterflies, those people in our workplace that love whatever they do and love the fact that they're there. That is infectious. And in Mark really kind of over the years has tried to disseminate that down into some real principles that we can use and carry on to others so that we can have a team of Freds working for us, not just coming across them in our personal lives. Right off, Joshua Wooden is the father of John Wooden. John Wooden was the UCLA basketball coach and is one of those kind of almost great founders of leadership principles in the modern age. Really a wonderful leader, and was able to put that down on paper in some great works. And his father said, make each day your masterpiece. And that's one of the core principles of the Fred Factor, and bringing that exceptional behavior and exceptional work to your everyday life. And that is, make each day your masterpiece. Bring your best. Show your best. Shab, so good to see you here. And the first thing that Mark noticed about Fred is his sincerity and warmth were noticeable immediately. And that's when I say, you see these people that bring the exceptional to what could otherwise be ordinary tasks, and they stand out, they get noticed. Now for you, bringing that exceptional nature to your job, you don't always feel that notice, and that's kind of the disconnect that is there and gets noted just a couple of times, but something that really needs to be, I think, brought out a little bit more in this book. If there's a couple of critiques I could make, and that is how to be exceptional and not get that positive feedback. You had the impact. People noticed it. You brought a smile to their face, but they might have been walking out of the Starbucks, walking out of your office, whatever it is. So, but the sincerity and the warmth, that's one of the keys. Being honest, being truthful. This isn't about being fake. This is about getting in touch with yourself, what you really want to bring to the job, and having an impact on others. And it's that warmth that comes through so much and so easily to others. Now, he mentioned something here that I called out, and it's something that I think all of us struggle with as leadership, or as leaders, and that is, I am particularly adept at finding and pointing out what's wrong with customer service and business in general. Finding examples of what's right, or even praiseworthy, is much harder. And he draws this because it's something that we see in our workday. Even if you are a frontline employee, you're constantly looking for what's wrong. What isn't being shipped the way it should? What's the quality control issue here? What's not being presented on the floor the right way? You're looking for problems. And oftentimes it's difficult, flat out difficult, to find what is right or what is praiseworthy in the organization. Now, I'll do a presentation or a workshop and we'll be talking about feedback, and I'll talk about, the success and the fact that, 98+% of what happens in the workforce in your workday is a success. If it wasn't, your organization wouldn't be in business. But we don't often see those successes. So the reason that this is brought up is because when you act with exceptionalism, when you act with that sincerity and warmth that we just talked about, that's something that stands out to others and that often gets noticed, whereas the other positive things might not get noticed by other individuals. Next thing, and there's a few things. We're going through kind of the Fred principles. And the primary principle here, and it gets called out because Fred is a mailman, which isn't always considered the most wonderful job, the most famous job that's out there, the one that has the most impact. Principle number 1 of the Fred principles is that everyone makes a difference. And I liked a couple of the call outs that are made in this particular session, all right? Everyone makes a difference. And this comes up a lot with bringing importance to people's positions. One of the main motivators that you can use as a leader to light a fire under your team is highlighting the importance of what it is that they do. If they weren't there, what would happen to the organization? What wouldn't get done? If nobody picked up the slack, if they all just disappeared one day, what would that impact be? How long could the company or the organization function if they weren't there? Everybody has a role. Everybody's important. If not, they wouldn't be there in the first place. Now, one of the call-outs is only the employee can choose to do his or her job in an extraordinary way, regardless of the circumstances. And this is the part of leadership that you have to step into, is explaining to that person why they should care, why they are important, and why that extraordinary effort is worthwhile. So you talk about the effects of what they do, how it is important. You bring that into the discussion a little bit more because you can't make somebody want to be extraordinary. You can't. There's all kinds of organizations that try. They raise quotas. They set the bar super high. But you can't make somebody do it without their consent. And so talking through why it's important, the impact that they can have on others is important. Most people have, and this gets into it, most people have a passion for significance. And that's kind of how you do it. Everyone makes a difference. That's the first principle of the Fred factor. And the fact is, you do. You at least have an impact on those around you. You at least are one cog that if you weren't there, the machine wouldn't function. So everybody has a significant role. Your purpose as a leader is to call out what that significance is. Call out why somebody is important, because I guarantee you most of the people have forgotten. It's something that's taken as a given, and it's something that gets left by the wayside. But if you bring it to the forefront, it's something that can excite a lot more passion. The second principle of the Fred factor is that success is built on relationships. And I really like this quote: indifferent people deliver impersonal service. If your team is indifferent to the service that they are providing, to the job that they are doing, if they are indifferent, if they're just going through the motions, then they are not going to be providing an exceptional level of service. They're going to provide impersonal service, which is at your best case scenario is at the lowest common denominator of what you're looking for in your team. But talking further about relationships and how it plays out, three points that are made here. Leaders succeed when they recognize that their employees are human. Technology succeeds when it recognizes that its users are human. And employees like Fred the Postman succeed when they recognize their work involves interacting with human beings. It is all a human, it's all relationship driven is what the principle states. But it's a human servicing world. Regardless of what the industry is that you're in, the end result is its impact on human beings. That's where the value comes in. And we're focusing on relationships and focusing on how you impact the person that is on the other end of the phone from you, the person that is on the other end of the shipment from you when you're shipping a product, the person that is on the other end of the invoice. Delivering that level of human service is something that takes things to the next level. The third principle is that you must continually create value for others, and it doesn't have to cost a penny. I'm going to say this again. The third principle of the Fred Factor, you must continually create value for others, and it doesn't have to cost a penny. And Mark Sanborn throws it out right here, and I really like this part here, and it is, the trick is to replace money with imagination, to substitute creativity for capital. Too often we use money as a crutch. We use that as the thing that's going to get us out of a problem, that's going to help deal with our problems. And it isn't often the thing that provides the most lasting benefit and the lasting value for you. So he carries on. Sanborn's maxim says that the faster you try to solve a problem with money, the less likely it will be the best solution. I'm going to say that one more time because it's really good. Sanborn's maxim says that the faster you try to solve a problem with money, the less likely it will be the best solution. And that, I think, is something that most of us, when we look back on our leadership, we can relate to. The wish that things were easier. And money often makes things easier. Having a larger staff, that's a money factor. All right? Having better equipment, better systems, better support, all comes down oftentimes to money. And so as leaders, we're challenged to make the most with what we have. And it's not necessarily fun, but that's the role that we're in. So substituting some creativity for that, as he lays out, is something that's very important, and it's something that the Freds in the world can do very well because they're focused on the more human elements that don't require capital, that just require effort. The fourth principle is that you can reinvent yourself regularly. Now, I like this. It's a little different, a little bit of a different take on where we're going with this. But a lot of this does require reinvention of yourself and how you approach the role. If Fred could bring such originality to putting mail in a box, how much more could you and I do bringing originality to what we do? Now, there's a lot in this story about Fred the Postman and how he goes about his work, and it's amazing. And it is often very simple how he does it. And I drew some correlations to my father and the original work that he did in trucking and what I was able to see. And a lot of it was just those simple things, that simple little extra effort that allowed for exceptional service and exceptional work to be done. And if you can do those things with the simple things, imagine what you can do if you brought a little bit more attention to that to your regular work as well. Next point here is that how you do that. So how do you bring some of that extra passion, that extra creativity? And here's what he goes through some examples of some Freds that he's seen in the world. And here's what this Fred did. She took some risks and had some fun. In this case, he's talking about a flight attendant who does one of those really creative safety briefings showing you how to use a seatbelt and where the exits are and that sort of thing. A relatively mundane but necessary thing to go through, and she did it in a fun way. But what she did is she took a risk. That going off of script was a risk, but it was also fun. But it was also done towards a purpose. This isn't what is highlighted necessarily by Sanborn here, but it's also done For the purpose. What is the purpose of that safety briefing? The purpose of that safety briefing when you are on an airplane is so that you understand where to go and what to do if there's an emergency. Now, the basic script for that is fine. However, the argument that can certainly be made and what was diminishing that risk is that if she told a funnier story, if she did it in a different way that captured the attention of the audience, it was actually going to be more effective than the more scripted way of doing things. So it was a calculated risk, but having fun with it as well. And so when we talk about, Fred the mailman, he's got a risk of maybe overcommitting himself at certain times. He's, the fun aspect of things is serving people. He's obviously a people person, Fred the postman is. But that's what's going to take you to that next level of providing exceptional service to your team and to your end customer is some risks calculated, and instituting a little bit of fun usually is something that gets better results from your team and even yourself. Next thing that I wanted to mention was always do your best because someone is watching. And this talks about, he's still going through some sightings of some Freds that he's seen out in the world. And it is often the example that you don't see that you set. The fact that your car happens to be there before everybody else is in the parking lot, or it's there at the end of the day when everybody leaves. That people drive by on the weekends and they see your light on. Those are things you would never notice. And I'm not necessarily saying you should work 24/7, but those are those things that you would never notice. You would never see the reaction that people had to that. But people notice. And people notice when you meet a difficult situation with care and with calm and with thoughtfulness. They see that. And it isn't just the person that you're talking to, it is everybody that is around you. So that's so much of the impact. And like I said, if there's one thing I wish was in this book more, it is dealing with that aspect of things. Where you can be the Fred and you can be exceptional at your work and bring an exceptional human element to what you do, but you don't see the impact that other people, that you have on other people because it often just goes by the wayside. So it's one thing that seems common to all human beings is a passion for significance. I've never met anyone who wanted to be insignificant. And this is talking about cultivating Freds and bringing more Freds out. And I've already kind of hit on this, but hitting on the importance that people's jobs have to the organization. Every single person that works for you, every single person in the organization is essential to the functioning of the operation in an effective way. If not, they wouldn't be there. And so you simply find what would happen if they weren't there and nobody picked up the slack. Who do they impact? Whose work do they make easier? Who do they cover for because they're down line in the food chain as far as the work is concerned? What impact do they have on individuals? Because every single person is important, and when you call that out, it's easier for them to step into Fred status. And I'll keep using that Fred as a verb because that's how the book rolls with it as well. Some of the ways to become a Fred is, first of all, you choose. And we talked about this before. Convert your job into one you love. Not by doing a different job, but by doing the one you have differently. Find those things that you enjoy in the job. Find those things that have impact and focus on those. Too many times we go through our lives thinking about and constantly focusing on all of the aspects of our job that we don't like. And you know what? There might be 5, 6, 10 different things in our job that we don't like. But you know what? They're outweighed by the 20, 30, 40 different things that we do like in our job. So spend some time focusing on those, not just the downsides, and it'll be a little bit easier for you to bring some passion to your work. Second thing, as far as becoming a Fred, is do the right thing for the right reason. You know, you're not looking for praise and recognition. You're doing things because it's the right thing. I sometimes relate my experience working in hospitality, and you work in a hotel. It's a very dynamic environment. Irfanallah, good to see you here. It's dynamic, and you don't have a procedure for everything that happens, but you stick with the principles of helping the customer, seeing that they have a great experience with your organization, with your hotel. And so that's what guides you. And so I do the right things for the right reasons. And you know what? I might step out of bounds just a little bit. I might not do exactly what the vice president would prefer that I did, but I did it for the right reasons, and I could kind of quote those reasons, and I was in touch with why I did things. So even if I did step out of bounds, which happened occasionally, I could explain why it took place, and then that was easily forgivable at that point. The third aspect of becoming afraid, your possibilities are endless. Get in touch with that. These things tend to build on one another. So when you have a good day with some great interactions with your team, it makes it easier to have another great day with more great interactions with your team. And you start building that, and it becomes kind of like compound interest for you. As you develop and you continue to do the right things, doing them for the right reasons, choosing to be exceptional as opposed to just ordinary, it has that benefit and it builds over time. Rarely does anything happen instantaneously. But if you continue to do the right things, over time you will get the benefits of those right things. Diving in just a little bit more and starting to get into the how do you find the things to do, and how do you become a Fred, and how do you find the ways that you can be exceptional. I really like this particular quote, and it was from Jim Cathcart. And it's to know more, notice more. We all have a lot on our plates. All of us have an overwhelming to-do list. And so a lot of times what happens is we're thinking about that to-do list as we're going through our day. Mathine, so good to see you here. But when you go through your day thinking about something else, you aren't noticing what's going on around you. And so if you want to know more, if you want to see your opportunities to step up and to be a Fred and to be exceptional, then you have to be willing to notice more. And so it may be that you turn that brain off a little bit from your to-do list when you're walking between meetings, and you make a conscious effort to notice more. This is the power of the principle of management by walking around. Old maxim by, I think it's Peter Drucker actually came up with it. And that is spending time throughout the day, maybe, a couple of times where you spend 15 minutes walking the floor, walking your department, making the rounds. Is there anything I can help you with? It may be after meetings, before meetings, just observing what's going on in the operation and looking for those opportunities to help individuals. The idea behind this is that it isn't about random acts of kindness. He actually puts this out. It is about practicing acts of the extraordinary regularly. Looking around, observing what's happening in your environment creates opportunities for you to step in and to step up into a new role. The other act is the difference of a great idea. The difference in the great idea is about the execution of that idea. And he calls this out. I won't get into the details of the story, but Bonnie didn't sit on her idea. She made it happen. Right now, you have got 1, 2, 3, probably a dozen ideas that could improve your operation and improve your organization. Act on one of those and see what happens. The ideas are great, but it is the execution of those ideas that matters more than anything. So look for a chance to put your ideas into action. You cannot be a Fred. You cannot be exceptional. You cannot be giving extra in a human way to your organization if you're not acting on those opportunities that you're seeing as you're noticing more and those ideas that you've already had. You have to put those things into action. And now there was a side level kind of talking about how you can actually bring that into people's lives a little bit. And I think part of that's looking for those opportunities. But I like this one principle in regards to a boss. Would you like to work for an incredible boss? Heck yes, love to. Then start by treating your boss like an incredible person. Do extraordinary things for him or her, and over time, I bet you'll notice a difference in your relationship. And if you don't, it's time to look for a new boss. I like that aspect of it here. Too many times we are looking for our bosses to serve us, for our bosses to meet us in the middle instead of us going to the middle and meeting them. And I really like this principle of doing something for your boss like you respected them highly. Imagine the best boss that you've ever had, or just imagine an absolutely stunning boss. What would you be willing to do for them? Would you be willing to stop off and get them a cup of coffee when you're getting a cup of coffee in the break room? Would you be willing to help them out and ask if they needed help with something? Would you be meeting them with a smile in the office as opposed to averting eye contact like might happen? Treating your boss with respect, treating your boss exceptionally helps create, it's called the Pygmalion Effect. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a way of getting them to believe in themselves that they are great and act towards you in a similar way that matches that greatness. And so it was one great thing that I hadn't thought about, is not just meeting your boss halfway, not just trying to mediate their weaknesses and try to build upon their strengths, is actually just flat out treating them like they were exceptional. I think that's a great little thing to do. To add value, success is built on relationships. So diving into this topic just a little, you add value to people when you value them. This is a quote from John C. Maxwell, and I'll throw this out here because it works for everything. Your customers, your employees, your boss, your peers, your family, your friends. This is a fantastic principle for life in general, and that is you add value to people when you value them. Getting back to that Pygmalion effect, that self-fulfilling prophecy, instilling value helps elicit some of that value from people. So I really like that as kind of an opening quote. Now, the 7 B's of relationship building. So being a Fred, being exceptional in a human way to people is all about relationships. You have to have that relationship with them. So he loads out 7 B's. First one is be real. You have to be sincere. And that makes nothing but sense, because people are really good at sniffing at BS. So you have to be real. You have to be doing it for the right reasons, which means that you are in touch with the benefit that others are getting and how that is worth more than the effort that you have to put in. So be real. Second is to be interested, not just interesting. Too often we're trying to sell ourselves. Be interested in the other individual. The one way to do this is to ask questions. Ask questions. The more questions you're asking, the more it's going to be about them as opposed to you. All right, so be real, be interested. 3 is being a better listener, getting back to that question thing. If you want successful relationships, you're real, you're sincere with people, you're interested in them, and you are listening to them in a way that gives you more information about them, which again gives you other opportunities. That's part of that noticing more to know more principle that he mentioned earlier. If you ask questions, if you're interested in people and you're listening to their responses, you're going to find all kinds of opportunities where you can help them. 4, be empathetic. You need to understand them, what they're feeling, what they're going through. Edlin, so good to see you here. 5, be honest, kind of doubling down on that being real part. Be helpful. That's where you get the benefit of listening and being interested to people. And 7 is be prompt. People's time is valuable. That's one of the best things that you can do, is be prompt. Beat your deadlines. As the old saying goes, early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. You want to be prompt with people. Respect their time, and they will know that you respect them. So just 7 quick principles on building relationships, and you can talk differently about it. You can come up with different ways of phrasing it. You can take some different tracks on it, but to be completely honest, that's it right there. That's 90+% of relationship building are those principles right there. So if you get in touch with those, you'll build better relationships, which will help you identify those opportunities for you to really step up and make a difference in people's lives. I'll skip over that part. Now, continually creating value for others. Simple principles here, talking to a world-famous French chef over in France, and it's, if you serve the principle of the restaurant, if you serve French fries, he says, make sure they're the best French fries in the world. Bringing passion to your work, trying to find a way to create value for other people. All right, something done, and I like this to kind of drive that home, because that makes sense. All right, yes. The more value that I bring to other people, the more valuable that I will be. That's great. That's the positive side. Here's the negative side of that argument. Something done, whether for a customer or a colleague, that doesn't provide value could be a waste of both time and energy. So here's the downside. If you aren't creating value with whatever it is that you do, with whatever it is you bring to your work in your day, then quite frankly, you may be wasting your time and energy. There isn't a middle ground. You're either creating value or you're not creating value. And so bringing that value actually gives you some sense of worth. And if you're not bringing that value, then you might not be having any sense of worth at all. Some ways to add value, kind of goes through it here. Attract through artistry. I had a position and the CEO was always constantly focused on brochures and sales and how it was all presented. And when I thought that something might be perfectly fine, and I wasn't in the marketing department, but I would see this, when I thought something was really good and perfectly fine, he always asked for more. He wanted more artistry. And that was one of the big selling points for the organization. One of the reasons I'm not in sales is that's not instinctually how I would work it. But very mundane product that we sold. Nothing particularly spectacular about it, but he was able to bring artistry to those moments, and that was something that helped distinguish us from the competition. Meet needs in advance. Again, getting back to that, to know more, notice more. If you want to meet needs in advance, you have to be aware of that need before it happens. And so you have to notice those things. So look for those opportunities where you can walk around the department and notice things. Stop thinking about what you have to do next. That can wait till you get back to your desk. But look for those opportunities to notice things that are going on in the department, and you'll have those opportunities. Next is add good stuff. You can add enjoyment to whatever it is you're bringing. You know what? This happens a lot with crises or tough times, or, like inventory in retail where people have to spend the night there. Then all of a sudden it's, the radio is turned on, people, it's a pizza night. So you're adding enjoyment to what would be a relatively mundane task. You can do that on a regular basis. Find ways to do that. Tony Robbins has a great example. He was away from work and he had like 145 messages to return or something like that. And he did it from the hot tub. And so he found a way to find enjoyment in what would be a somewhat soul-sucking sort of task, depending on the call that you're returning. But he found a way to find enjoyment. Look for ways to add enjoyment to the work. All right. Subtract the bad stuff. All right. The big one that they mention is waiting. Find a way to eliminate people's need to wait or bring more enjoyment to the waiting. If you've ever waited in a long line at Disneyland, it isn't just a line through a warehouse. They've got stuff going on, stuff for you to watch, trying to make that waiting a little bit more enjoyable. Defects, mistakes, eliminating those things kind of goes without saying, but that's a great way to add a little bit more value to whatever it is that you bring. Don, good to see you here. One of the most powerful things anybody can do to achieve Fred status, I'm going to say this because this is a really good one here, and it's talking in the mistakes area. One of the most powerful things anybody can do to achieve Fred status is this: solve a problem you didn't create. Say that again. You want to be a Fred, you want to be somebody who is exceptional and brings exceptional value to the organization and is recognized for that, then solve a problem that you didn't create. And this has to step out. This isn't just your team, because your job as a leader is if they don't fix the problem, then you are ultimately responsible for it. This is outside of your area of expertise. Solve a problem you didn't create, and you will now be on your fast track to Fred status. It's no compliment to be called a problem spotter. I love this. It's not a compliment to be called a problem spotter. What is the compliment that's given? It is the world loves problem solvers. All right? Spotting problems, easy. We're all really good at that. Solving problems is something where you're adding value. That's huge. Other things as far as creating value is eliminate irritation and frustration wherever it happens to be. Answering the phone within 3 rings. That's your classic example of something that eliminates frustration. People don't have to wait for you to pick up the phone, for those that, make phone calls. It could be returning emails in 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you're in a customer service department that has an email inbox. Doing that quickly eliminates a certain level of frustration. Misinformation, that's another great one. If you want to eliminate things to create value, eliminating misinformation, conveying information in a better and more simple way is a way to do that. The other one is surprise. Surprise others. Positive surprise. This is that randomly bringing in donuts on a Thursday. That's a positive surprise that adds value. As simple and as silly as that is, it also adds sugar to the operation, which makes people work faster, FYI. But no, just those simple surprises. If you have customer interaction, surprising them with a simple gift, a little simple add-on, those are those things that really matter. Talking now about moving on to reinventing yourself, all right? First of all is being led by compelling reasons. And I like the way he phrases this, because it gets you in touch with some things, very deep things here, and that is, what did you once deeply desire to accomplish that you never attempted? We all have those things that we really wanted to accomplish that we never actually attempted, never went down that road. That can be a great thing that's, leads you, dive into that a little bit and find out the reasoning behind that. The other thing is, as far as reinventing yourself, a simple exercise is to increase your IQ. And he isn't talking about intelligent quotient here. In this case, he's talking about implementation quotient. How many ideas do you have that you haven't implemented? How many ideas do you have that you have implemented? That's your implementation quotient. If you want to reinvent yourself, often the path is already paved with the ideas that you've had in the past. That's something that brings a little bit more excitement and new opportunities. And so I really like that. If there's one actionable kind of takeaway from that, it is to take the ideas that you already have for improving your operation and picking one of those to implement over the course of the next week. And then see where that leads as far as implementing another one. Too many times we have all these great ideas and we don't bring those out into the real world. One extraordinary act a day isn't overwhelming. It is very doable. Again, one extraordinary act a day isn't overwhelming. It is very doable. It is having the conversation with an employee about their ideas and what they can bring and what their potential is for the organization. It's recognizing when you need to help somebody out in another department, maybe even amongst your employees. Those noticing of things. One extraordinary thing a day. If you can get one extraordinary thing a day down, it builds on itself. That's the power of this, is day in, day out, all of a sudden you can transform what you bring to the job from your heart and the energy you bring to the job, but also the impact that you have on others around you can be enormously helpful. So as far as building up, so if that's great for you, that's great. But as a leader, wouldn't it be great to have a team of Freds working for you? And so he lays out the example and lays it out is Fred. Find, reward, educate, and demonstrate. Now, the finding aspect of things as far as a recruiting thing, and it's something that I don't see nearly enough of, and that is your organization a Fred magnet? Great employees have a choice as to where they want to work and have a choice as to what they will even apply for in the first place. All right, people want to work in organizations and for bosses who offer them a change and a chance. I like that, a change and a chance. And from a practical side of this, what I tell people is when you go out with a job description and you post it on Monster, Career Builder, whatever the job sites are that you post to, I want you to make that description sound difficult. I want you to put in the thresholds that people need to meet. I want you to put in the numbers. I want you to make that into a big deal. The reason for that is A, to cut out the people that aren't going to be interested in giving an extra effort, and you'll probably pick most of those out in any sort of interview anyways, but it just gets rid of all the riffraff that might be applying for the job. But the right people are actually going to be attracted to that. So you don't undersell the job, you oversell it as far as its responsibility and as far as its impact. It also is kind of a check for you as far as making it a powerful job and seeing what you need to do to that particular job and that role in the organization to make it more impactful. But make sure that you're phrasing things and putting things out there so that it attracts the right kind of person. Now, one of the ways to do this also is to include it in your interviews. So some questions that Sanborn has down, and if you have the book, it's on page 79, some good questions to put in there. Who are your heroes and why? Asking potential employees, interviewees, these questions can kind of give you an idea of their possible Fred impact. Why would anyone do more than is necessary? Tell me 3 things that you think would delight most customers, clients, consumers. What's the coolest thing that's happened to you as a customer? What is service? And so asking some of these questions helps you to elicit whether the person sitting across from you and interviewing for the job has that sort of Fred potential. Bring this out. Think about it when you're bringing people onto your team, and you'll be more likely to get people. Now, reward is very simple. The second aspect of building up a team of Freds is reward, and it's we get the behavior, we reward. I use the example from Tom Peters. You celebrate what you want to see more of. So when people act in a Fred sort of way, when they go the extra mile, it's incumbent upon you to call that out because you want to see more of it. All right? When you don't see much meaning in what you do, you won't bring much value to what you do. And that gets into that recognition part. I'm going to say this again. When you don't see much meaning in what you do, you won't bring much value to what you do. So when you call out when people go the extra mile, then they actually see the value that they get out of that, and then they want to do more of it. If they don't get that recognition, then it becomes that classic, well, why would I do anything extra? Nobody ever recognizes it anyways. We've all been in that situation at some point in our lives. And so that's the kind of kick in the pants for you to be rewarding and celebrating what you want to see more of. Third aspect is educating, all right? And there was one aspect of this that really jumped out to me, and that was dissect and debrief. Generally, a positive change will not endure unless we understand why it worked. And for me, I've brought this up before in, hey, learning from your mistakes is great. And it's important that you learn from your mistakes. But if you want to double or triple the speed with which you learn from your successes as well. And he gets into that dissect and debrief. All right, so when you have a success, when something goes really well, take an extra look at it and see what you can learn from it that you can make it a little bit more of a frequent occurrence. So first, identify the good idea. How did it make you feel? How did it come about? Adapt the idea to new situations. How can this be brought out to different situations? This happened one time in the hospitality industry for me, where we went above and beyond. We had a big convention coming in. There was a huge, 2,000 rooms were going to check in on the same day, and it was a 3,000 room hotel, huge. And so a big effort was put forward for this particular convention. But the question came up afterwards is, well, why wouldn't we do that on any day where we reach a certain threshold? There's certain Fridays in Las Vegas where the whole place almost turns over, where you will have, in a 3,000 room hotel, 2,000 check-ins. So why would we do it for just this one convention when we could do it every time and make the check-in experience easier and better for everybody? So that was just one way of taking a success and dissecting it. Look for ways to improve it. There's always ways to improve it. Just because something was successful doesn't mean it couldn't be an even greater success if you picked some things out from it. And then look for new opportunities for application. That was where we took that idea in regards to conventions and rolled it out to every busy weekend. But look to educate people, and having more discussions in regards to those successes is something that is important. So not just calling out the success, but talking it through just a little bit more. Cements it in place so that people are starting to learn to think for themselves in regards to their own successes. And so that's part of that, creating a ripple effect in how you do and work through things. Last comment here, and demonstrating a Fred fact, the Fred principles is the fourth thing in creating a number of Freds, and we've gone over a bunch of how to get that. Two things to kind of finish this off, and that he brings up at the end of this book that I thought were important, and that is, it is much easier to act with generosity towards lovable people. Just about anybody can do that. But what happens is, to do that with people of poor behavior or negative circumstance is the tough challenge of life. I'm going to say that again. It is easier because you might be thinking, I've got 5 of my employees that would be great with this, but I've got another 5 employees that I could never see being Freds and getting into this. And so I'm going to say this again. It's much easier to act with generosity towards lovable people. Just about anybody can do that. But to do that with people of poor behavior or negative circumstance is the tough challenge of life. And so, yes, you want to step up, all right, and be ready for that challenge of being generous to people that aren't generous in return. But here's the kicker, and it comes a couple of paragraphs later. People become more lovable when they are loved. And I would add, people become more generous when people are generous towards them. People will mirror the behavior that they see and the behavior that they get from other individuals. And that's the last thing that I would mention. If you want to bring an exceptional level of humanity, of creativity, of motivation to your work, to make it important work, then have that reflected, then reflect that in other individuals. You push that out, you become the example that other people mirror, and all of a sudden you have an entire team of exceptional people. So, The Fred Factor, very short book, all right, little over 100 pages. You can probably get through it in a couple of hours without too much trouble, and it's just a really nice little motivational book that gets you thinking about how you can make a difference in your job and get you back in touch with the principles that make you want to take the job in the first place. So with that said, obviously, if you have any questions at all, you can always drop me an email on this, and I'll get back to you. Next week and the weeks following, you'll see it up here in the description to this video. I've got the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People next Friday. Now, probably everybody out there has read this book, one of the most popular books that's out there. And it's something that I've read a couple of times before. And what I find is that people read it and then they never come back to it. And so if you've read it 10 years ago, how different are you today? What roles are different that you're playing? You're going to bring a whole new set of experiences to the book. It will be brand new. And so I'm excited to get into that discussion with you. Crucial Conversations is the week after that, and then the Dichotomy of Leadership, the new book by Jocko Willink, is going to be reviewed after that. So just some discussions where I pull out some thoughts that I think would be relevant to you, frontline leaders, and that you can take with you and hopefully make you a better leader. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.